Hakadosh Boker Or, Masechet Gittin Daf Daled Amud Aleph 481. We are talking about right now the machloket, if you remember, between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar. So here it says Ve'ela Rabbi Meir, but rather it has to be according to Rabbi Meir. I'm just starting on Gimel Amubet, just again to get back into it, where we said it's going to be right? He says it's going to be Rabbi Meir. V'chilobai Rabbi Meir ketiva. When do we say that Rabbi Meir does not need ketiva lishma midoraita? But midorabanan he still needs ketiva lishma. Ve'amar Rav Nachman says Rav Nachman Omer ya Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir used to say afilu mitzao be'ashpa, even if you found it in the garbage, v'chatamo and you signed it, umtanala and you gave it to her, kasher, it's going to be kosher. Yeah. V'chitei ma'ana midoraita kamatnin la. If you're going to tell me right now, Midoraita, right? That we need to learn. He says, what does that mean? The Midoraita, we're still talking about this. If so, it says Rabbi Meir, Dvar Torah mibaile. He should have said that Dvar Torah, a get that you found in the garbage and you gave it is going to be kasher. That's what it should have been written. But rather, it says the Gemara, we're going to retract now. This is where we're starting today. Ela leolam, but really, be'emet, bilazari. It's a bilazar. When does Rabbi Elazar say that you don't need chatima at all? You don't need the to sign it whatsoever? If there's no edim whatsoever, okay. Right? But if there are edim, which means like this: if you don't have edim at all, so then you're right. You don't need chatima lishma. But if you already have the edim, you have to be lishma. Where is this very similar to?
If you have the edim.
If you have a deem, it has to be written lishma. It has to be signed lishma. But if you don't have a deem, so then it's okay.
There's no chatima.
Then there's no chatima bichlal.
What is it similar to?
Yeah. So he comes and he says like this: Damar Rabbi Abba says Rabbi Abba, Modeh Rabbi Elazar says Rabbi Elazar, b'mezuyaf mitocho. Right? What does it mean mezuyaf mitocho? He says that when we're talking about the concept of mezuyaf mitocho, that it's going to be pasul, which means that there does exist such a concept that if it's already looks that it's not, meaning that there's a chatima psula, so then it means that the entire thing is not good. And if the entire thing is not good, so then it's going to be pasul, which means that as long as there's no chatimot whatsoever, so then it's fine. Why? According to Shtat Rabbi Elazar, you don't need the chatima. You only need the ketiva lishma. The katav la is the ketiva. Chatima, you don't really need it. Something extra, but you don't really need it. No, for sure. We never choshim mezil. Yeah, but if you already have the signatures there, then what? So then here you have that. Then he says that that it has to be 100% kosher edim and edim which are also lishma. Why? He says because if not, it's going to be considered pasul. It's going to be considered disqualified. Because once you already have the edim there, then you're going to need it to be 100% kosher. Okay? Fine. Ravashi comes and he says, Hamani, who is this? He comes and he says, who is this? Rabbi Yudahi. It's Rambas, we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yudahi is Oziel, ketivato v'chatimato betalush. Right? According to Shitat, Rabbi Yudah, he says that you need the ketiva and the chatima being done when it was detached. You remember we brought down this Mishnah to do it later on. Later on, the Mishnah of 21, Kafalef said that according to Rabbi Meir, right, you could write it attached, and then detach it, and then sign it. Because according to Rabbi Meir, when it says v'katav, it means v'chatam. It means to sign, not to write. According to Rabbi Elazar, it was, no, you need it even from the beginning. But according to Rabbi Yudah, he says, no, everything. Also the ktiva and also the chatima has to be done betalush. So therefore, then this shita that says that you need ketiva b'chatima lishma is according to shita Rabbi Yehuda. So ask the Gemara, if you just now brought me a third shita, we only knew two shitot. We knew shitat Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Meir says chatima lishma, and Rabbi Elazar says ketiva lishma. Then we started speaking about midrabanan because this was all doraita. That maybe Rabbi Meir still needs the chatima midrabanan and the ketiva midrabanan lishma. Maybe Rabbi Elazar needs the chatima lishma drabanan, right? But now you have shitat Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is a new player. Rabbi Yehuda comes and he says you need the ketiva and chatima. So therefore, why don't we say from the beginning, Ketiva v'chatima? Says the Gemara, Madrina na Rabbi Meir. We wanted to say that it's going to be Rabbi Meir, the Stamatzitin Rabbi Meir. Meaning, we're always going to try to say that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Meir, because Stam Mishnah is like Rabbi Meir. Meaning, if there's no author in the Mishnah, usually it means that it's Rabbi Meir. Because remember, Rabbi Meir was a Stam Mishnah, right? Me'adrina, right? Then he says, and Me'adrina Rabbi Lazar, we're going to try to make it like Rabbi Lazar, because we have a Kabbalah that the halacha is like him in Gittin, which means like this. We first tried to make it like Rabbi Meir because it was a Stam Mishnah, and Stam Mishnah is like Rabbi Meir. Then we said, okay, fine, if we couldn't make it like Rabbi Meir, let's try to make it like Rabbi Lazar, because the Stam halacha in Gittin is always like Rabbi Lazar in Gittin. So we prefer to say that it's like him, right? And if you can't have either or, so now you're going to say that's Rabbi Yehuda, right? But really, we try to make it either like Rabbi Meir or like Rabbi Elazar. Okay? Tanan. Yeah, we learned in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel Omer, Rabban Gamliel says, even if you're going to bring from Reka min Chager to Eretz Yisrael, you have to say Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer said, even from Kfar Ludim to Lod. Amar Abaye says, Vayerot Smuchot leEretz Yisrael. We're talking about cities which are very close to Israel. Umuvlaot b'tchum Eretz Yisrael. They're very like muvla. They're mamash. They're right by there by the border, right? What does that mean? That means the Rekem and all these, they're mamash right there. So you actually have a picture down there in the bottom, right? We're going to see it. If you look at the bottom there in the art school, you have a picture over there. Basically, you could see how it is that there's Chutz Haaretz and then there's Eretz Yisrael, and it's mamash right on the city boundaries. Okay? Ve'amar Rabbi Bechana, says Rabbi Bechana, the Didi Chazi Le'ahu Atra, I saw Kfar Ludim, Lelod, V'avakim Beku Ve'Madita. Right? And it's like from Be'kube to Pimpedita, which is mamash a very small amount. Yeah? If I remember, it was a mil. Right? Miklal, the Tanakama Savar, so it's mashma that the Tanakama held, lo tzarich. Right? These cities, they don't need. Right? The reason why is because I remember, if I remember correctly, it was in the Gemara Masechet Megillah. I think we learned it once, if you remember that there. Right? That there, it was a very, very small, right, amount, right, of the concept. Which one? So here in the footnote, it says that it's 6. Okay? Fine. Now the Gemara is going to say as follows. It says, Miklal the Tanakama Savar, so it's mashman that the Tanakama holds that we do not need to say in these places which are going to be so close to Eretz Yisrael. So says the Gemara, my love back is that not the machloka between them? The more Savar, but the Tanakama holds of Fishem Bekil Lishma, that they're not Bekil Lishma. The Hani Gmire. These people, they're so close to Israel, they know Lishma. Meaning the Tanakama is holding like who? Who was the one that said that the reason was because of Lishma? What was the name of the rabbi?
Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Lazar?
No. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Lazar was the concept of you need Ketiva Lishma or Chatima Lishma. What is the reasoning? Why do you have to say V'fanei Nechtav, V'fanei Nechtav?
What is the reason?
Ken, Masiba. Shte reasons.
The reason is if you come from outside of Israel.
In the garbage. No,
that's what we
If you
mean.
come from outside of Israel into Israel.
What? You have to say V'fanei Nechtav, V'fanei Nechtav. Why?
Because they don't know the deal outside.
Rabba with a hey says Lefi Shem Bekin Lishma. Outside of Israel, they're not experts in Lishma. And Rava with an Aleph says Lefi Shem Mitzuin Lekayem Et Ashtar, meaning that they're not witnesses that are found in order to verify the signatures. Remember, there are two different reasons: Rabba and Rava. Because of Bekin Lishma, right? That they don't know that it has to be done Lishma, or because of that you don't have witnesses to verify it. And then we spoke about, so then why don't you need 2 edim instead of 1 ed v'chule v'chule? So says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me right now that Tanakama is the one that holds the Fishem Bekin Lishma, V'hane Gemira, these people are Gemira, these people are learned. Why are they learned? They're right outside of Israel. Meaning you're right, maybe in America, maybe they don't know about Lishma. But here, it's mamash, it's right by Israel. They're by the border of Israel. Umor Savar and Gamliel holds, right? He said, because there's nobody that's going to verify the signatures. The Haninami Lo Shlicha, here also, they're not going to, because since they're outside of Israel, nobody's going to be able to come in to verify the signatures. It's outside of the Gvul. You need a passport to get into the country, right? Once you need these things, it's difficult. So answers the Gemara, lo, it's not true. Rabba mitaretz tameh, and Rabba mitaretz tameh. Each one is trying to answer according to his reasoning. Rabba with a hey, and Rava with an aleph. Remember, Sfaradim say Rabba and Rava. According to Ashkenazim, it's Rabba the Rova. Yeah, it's like a A and an O, right? But the difference for us is just the Hey and the Aleph. You can't really know the difference, right? Even though who was the Rebbe and who was the Talmid?
Abba's
Wova was the
With an Aleph or Hey? Tell me, I don't know.
with an Aleph.
Aleph was
Wova
what?
was the
Talmid.
He was a Talmid. Rabbi and Rav Yosef were the Rosh Yeshivot, remember. It was Rabbi and Rav Yosef, and the students of Rabbi and Rav Yosef was Abaye and Rava with an Aleph. Okay? Very important. Says the Gemara, Rabba with a Hey, he answers according to his reasoning. According to everybody, it's always the Fisha Mekil Nishma. It's because people in Chutzaretz are not experts in Nishma, which means you're going to go right now to France or to all these places, and you're going to start telling them, okay, you guys are writing a get. They don't know. L'shem ha'ish, l'shem ha'isha, l'shem girushin. Yeah.
מה זה הם לא בקיאים ב...
הם לא יודעים את זה, הם לא יודעים שצריך את זה. So basically, because not everybody is going to be bekiim, and since not everyone is going to be experts, so therefore we do not know. And over here, this is a machlok between them. Tanakama savar, the Tanakama holds hani, given the smuchot. These people, since they're close by migmar gmire, they're already experts because they're so close to Israel. Gamliel comes and he says, muvlaot gmire, only the ones which are completely absorbed in Israel. That means basically they're completely surrounded by Israel. They are going to be, right, gmire, they're going to be learned. But the ones which are smuchot, they're not learned. Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, muvlaot namilo. Also, muvlaot are also not going to be learned. Shelot tachlok b'mdinat hayam, because we do not want to make a differentiation between Medinat Hayam. So I don't know if you guys are trying to understand. What we're trying to do is like this. What we're trying to say is that we have a machloka between Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer, right? Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer, right? Rabbi Gamliel, right? Now what happens? We come and we said, right, that there was also a machloket in the Mishnah in itself of Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer, right? So he comes and he says this. Rabbi comes and he says the machloket between them was not because of lishma and not lishma. Because if you're going to tell me that it has to be according to Rabbi legamre, so what is it? He comes and he says like this. He says, what is a machloket between them? According to everybody, if it's going to be outside of Israel, they're not lishma. Machloket is the ones which are smuchot, right? Why? Because if they're going to be smuchot, they're probably learned. They're right by Israel. So they're basically, they're like Israel. So therefore, they know lishma. Rabbi Gamliel says, no. Only muvlaot know lishma. And if they're smuchot, they don't. And Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, even muvlaot, it's not good. Why? Because he wants to say that we don't want to differentiate between Medinat Hayam. Meaning once it's in the diaspora is diaspora. So three different shitot. Tanakama, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer. According to Tanakama, this is all in Rabbah. All in Rabbah, that what? That we're talking about Bekin Lishma. Okay? So one more time. Bekin Lishma is Rabbah with a hey. According to Tanakama, he says they're not Bekin Lishma and Chutzaretz. But if they're smuchot, they are Bekin Lishma. If they're close by the Bekin Lishma. According to Rabbi Gamliel, he says only if they're muvlaot are they Bekin Lishma. If they're absorbed within, meaning covered by all sides, they are Bekin Lishma. But if they're smuchot, they're close by, they're not Bekin Lishma. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, he says, no, even muvlaot also, you can't permit it, because even if you're going to tell me they are lishma or not lishma, doesn't matter, because we don't want to differentiate in the diaspora. The second it's in the diaspora, it's in the diaspora. Rava metaretz atamen. Now Rava comes and he's going to answer according to his reasoning. Dechule alma, according to everybody, right? Lefi sheredim mitzuim, the kaimo. He wants to say that the only reason why over here it's going to be good or not good is because whether there's going to be witnesses to be mekayem, the testimony, the witnesses or not. Meaning, are there going to be people that are going to be able to verify the signatures or not? Tanakama savar, Tanakama hold, hane given the smuchot mishkach shiche. Since they're so close to Israel, for sure you have people going back and forth. You could verify signatures. Gamliel says, only if they're completely absorbed by Israel, which means that they're completely surrounded by Israel, yes, then you could have people coming back and forth so quickly. But if it's going to be only just close by, doesn't always happen. But Rabbi Eliezer comes and he says, Muvlaot namilo, we don't want to come and make a differentiation in Muvlaot. Why? He comes and he says, Shelot tachlok b'mdinat hayam, because we do not want to come and say anything to do with Medinat Hayam. Yeah? He comes and he says like this. Okay, Tanan. Right? He comes and he says like this. Yeah? He comes and he says like this. Yeah? Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Okay? Chachamim say, Eno tzarich sheyomar b'fanei nechtav b'fanei nechtam, אלא מביא מדינת הים והמוליך. Chachamim come and they argue and they say, no. When do you have to say b'fanei nechtav b'fanei nechtam? He comes and he says, only from, if you're going to bring him from Dinat Hayam. Why? Miklal, because we said the Tanakama Savar Molich, Lo Tzarich. So it's mashma that the Tanakama holds that if you're going to bring a get from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz Aretz, you don't need to say B'fanei Nechtam, B'fanei Nechtam. Right? That means one more time, it's only one way, not two ways. Meaning if you're only going to Israel, you have to say it. But if you're going from Israel outside, you don't need to say it. We're not talking about the more Savar Lefisha Mekil Nishma, because the name Dinat Hayam, they're not Mekil Nishma. Right? Daled Amubet, 4b. 1 second. V'hani Gmile, and these people in Bnei Eretz Yisrael, they are Bekim. Which means like this, right? What are we trying to say? We're trying to say that if you're going from Israel to outside, Israel, they are Bekim Nishma. So therefore, according to that, when you go outside, you don't need to say it. But if you're going to tell me that the reasoning is because of witnesses to verify signatures, you don't have people getting out of Israel so quickly. So therefore, the same thing, you don't have anybody to verify signatures. So maybe that's a machloka between them. What? One more time. Rabba metaretz tameh, ve'Rava metaretz tameh. He says Rabba and Rava, each one answer according to their reasonings. What does that mean? Again, let's try to see. Rabba metaretz tameh. Rabba comes and he wants to answer according to his reasoning. Dechuli alma, that according to everybody, the fish bikil nishma. The entire reason is because of bikil nishma. And here, b'gzera molicha tu mevi kamipalgeh. Here, there's a machloket. Do we make a gzera, right, of molich atu mevi? Molich means you're taking it from Israel, outside of Israel. Mevi is hamevi get mimdinat hayam. You're bringing it from the diaspora to the Israel. So the Tanakama Savar Tanakama holds lo gazir molich atu mevi. We don't make such a decree molich atu mevi, which means if you're taking it from Israel outside, there's no problem. Maybe next time you're going to bring from outside to Israel. No, we don't make such a decree. Everyone knows Israel is special. So therefore, that's according to what we're in Rabbah. We're in Rabbah with a
right.
Okay, and the rabbis hold, that's a Chachamim, they hold that we do make a gzera molicha tu mevi, which means according to the Chachamim, they come and they say, you know what, 1 second, if you're going to start making that there's different rules, it's too complicated, right? If you're going out, if you're coming in, right? Imagine right now they had that Avdil Elef Avdalot with the coronavirus. No, if you go from America to this say, this is halacha, but if you come to this place, it's a different halacha. There was certain things that, but it's very confusing. Because then where are you going? How are you doing it? A lot of the places, right? A lot of the places they wanted to make no. It's vice versa. You put us in red, we're going to put you in red. And is that why? Because kilu, we don't, it became like very political. You understand? But what's going on? Here they say that the rabbis came, the Chachamim, they came and they said, listen, you know what, we're going to start differentiating where you're coming from, where you're going. No. Anytime that you're going anywhere, you're changing countries, right? You need a passport, you have to say, right? You have to do it. According to the Tanakama, he says, no. Israel is Bekil Nishma. If you're going to bring it from Israel outside, you don't have to worry about it. That is the first answer of Rabba. Second answer, Rava, with an aleph. Rava metaretz tameh. He says everybody agrees that what? That there's no witnesses to be mekayim the document. He says but they're only explaining it. Meaning like this. What does that mean? He said Mimila, also the molich from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz Aretz also has to say v'fanei. So the rabbis that they didn't come to argue afterwards. They're coming to explain the Tanakama. They came in and explained the Tanakama that also a molich also has to from Israel to Chutz Aretz also has to say right? Why? Because there's no witnesses. So if he's not coming to argue, and according to Rabba with a hey, there was machloka between them. According to Rabba with an aleph, there's no machloka between them. The rabbis later on were explaining the Tanakama. The Tanakama just said that basically that if you take a get from Chutz Aretz to Israel, you have a certain halachot. So says the Rava, the Chachamim, since the reasoning is because of witnesses. So if you're going to do vice versa, you also need witnesses. And therefore, you're going to have to say Fanei Nechtam also. Okay? Now we're going to ask a question on Rabbah with a hey. Again, remember, Rabbah with a hey holds of. What is Rabbah with a hey? Bekiut lishma. Yeah? Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, if you're going to bring a get from one country to another country inside the diaspora, you have to say if it's in the same country, you don't need to. He says, 1 second, for Rava, it makes sense. As if we're talking about now witnesses, you're in the same country. So if you're in the same country, it makes sense. I don't need to say why? Because I'm going to have witnesses back and forth. But if you're going to tell me that it has to do with lishma, why wouldn't you need to do lishma? At the end of the day, even if you're in the same country, maybe it could be that Bedin are clueless, and the other Bedin, they know what they're doing, right? Remember, even within Bedins, I just showed you one, but there are many Bedins that they're not bona fide. What does it mean they're not bona fide? They're not accepted, right? And sometimes they were accepted because of the beginning, and then they realized that they weren't accepted, and they were retracted, and it wasn't that simple. So he says, right? He comes and he says this. He says, the Rabbi, it's going to be a question. So says we're not going to say ha be'otam medina medinat nutzrich. Elaima medina medina beretz Yisrael utzrich. He says you're right. Outside of Israel, it could be that you do need from one country to another country or within the same country, but in Israel itself you don't need it. That's what it means. In Israel you don't need it. So says the Gemara, we already learned that explicitly. Ha behet yaktanila. Ha mavi get beretz Yisrael. And if you're going to bring a get in Israel, you don't need to say Faranta. So when it says that you're bringing a get from one Medina to another Medina, you can't say that it's Israel, right? Why? Because you already just said that if you're bringing in Israel, you don't have to say Faranta. So then says the Gemara, if it's going to be from over there, Havamina, one of these words, Anamila b'diavad, only going to be b'diavad. But lechatchila lo, but I would thought that lechatchila, right? Do you have to see the ktiva nechatima? I would say that you don't need to, right? Right, that means lichatchila, you cannot be a shaliach unless you actually saw the ktiva b'chatima. But b'diavad, right? If you already came to Israel, right, or you already came from Dinam and Eretz Yisrael, right? It's not going to be pasul, but lichatchila you would need it. Kamashmanan, that even lichatchila you don't need it. Okay, that's what it's coming to teach you. That even lichatchila you do not need to see anything if it's done in Israel. Meaning in Israel in itself, you do not need walo. You don't need anything, right? So that's what we're trying to come and teach you. So it says the Gemara, v'ika demotivla. And some people are actually going to ask it as the question. You're going to tell me that in Israel you do not need. And here's the opposite now. If you're going to tell me from one Medina to another Medina in Israel that you don't need it, that's a proof to Rabba, because everyone's Bekil Nishma. But according to Rava, that he says that you need witnesses. Why? So says the Gemara, you're right. Lo teima. Don't say that from one place to another place you don't need it. But in the same country, in the diaspora, you don't need it. So says Aval, however, though, what about from one country to another country in Israel? Meaning in Israel, there's different districts, right? So what's going to happen then? Sarich, you should need it. So litni, you should have said in the Mishnah, mevim dinam dina stam, right? Which is stam, not only just in Israel. There's no difference between Israel and dinat yam. So says the Gemara, leolam dinam dinam beretz Yisrael nami lo tzarich. Really, be'emet, in Israel you don't need. But people are ole regalim, which means that even if it's going to be that the people don't go all the time traveling, but always aliyah leregel, people always come. And the fact that there's always going to be people which are coming for aliyah leregel, there's always people that are coming that they can verify signatures because they come 3 times a year to do aliyah leregel. So it says the Gemara, that's only good if there was a bet hamikdash. And since there was a bet hamikdash, there was ole regalim. So he says, what are you going to say if there's no Bet HaMikdash? So says the Gemara, he says, no, because there's Batei Dinim Kvuin in the cities of Israel. And therefore it's Mishkach Shriach, right, that you're going to have, it's going to be common that you're going to be able to be, because there's going to be from even one place to another place, meaning that in certain places in Israel, they had Batei Dinim. Wasn't everywhere. So for they had to be coming to those places in Bedins and all these things. So because
we are sending for each one per year.
Well, not always. That's what we're saying here. So he's saying here, it all depends. There were certain places that they didn't have Batei all over. So therefore, they used to come and travel to certain places. Certain places, for example, even until today, they'll still travel to the Bedin of Yerushalayim, right? Other places will go to Bedin of Tel Aviv. Other places will go to, every place. But it all depends. Okay? Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah. Rabban Shimon Gamliel Omer, Shimon Gamliel says, Afilu Migmonia Legmonia, even from one district to another district, you have to say B'fanim Tam. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak said, Yitzchak, Kira Chataita, but it said there was one city, Asasiot Shema. The name was in Israel, that the name was Asasiot. They had two different districts, right? And what happened? They had to say, they had to say it. Why? Because imagine right now, you had here, nowadays, everything's open. You understand? But imagine right now that you had within the same country of, let's say, Poland, was divided into two, right?
Berlin.
And which one?
Berlin with the wall.
Exactly, Berlin, right? One on the inside, one on the outside. And it's considered two completely different districts. They could be 2 feet from each other.
The states in Texas and Florida is the same.
No, but you could travel within one another without any problems. Like here, we're talking about that they're so strict. You didn't have to go that far. You have Miami-Dade and Broward. You've got Surfside and Bal Harbor. They're 1 feet. Yeah, I said you go 1 feet. Yeah, you have to be careful. Yeah, he comes and he says, right? A person has to understand that. Yeah, so he comes and he says, right, that what are you going to do? So he comes and he says, "Lerava nicha." So that's going to be good for Rava then, right? Lerava kashia. But according to Rava, it's going to be a question. Why? Because what do I care now that you have a place in Israel that is called Asasiot and you have people which are makpidim, non-makpidim? What do you care? At the end of the day, they're all bekin lishma. But if you're going to tell me it's because of witnesses and they can't go by because their police is so makpid that they don't want them to go by, there it's a little bit more difficult. So the answer is Gemara, Rabba itle de Rava. It comes out that Rabba also holds of the reasoning of Rabba. Meaning, according to Rabba, the main reason of the finance of them is why? Lishma. But Rabba also holds of Edim also. Meaning that we need witnesses also to be Mekayim the Shtad. He also holds of that reason. And what's the proof? Because if not, then you're right. Why do you need from Egmonia to Egmonia in Israel? Why would you need it? It doesn't make sense. Okay, Ela Barabba. My Benai, what is the difference between them? Ika Benai, the difference between them is that you betray, which means that 2 people came together, Mimdinat Hayam, which means that the husband sent both of them together to divorce. According to Rabba, they have to say, why? Because you need Lishma, right? And maybe it wasn't Lishma. But to do with the get, there's no difference in 1 Shaliach or 2 Shlichim. But according to Rabba, they don't need to because you have 2 witnesses here. There are 2 people. And therefore, it's 2 people. You could be Mekayim the Shtar. Inami or Be'ota Medina Medinat Hayam. In the same Medina Medinat Hayam. According to Rabba, you still have to say, why? Because they're not Bekim Lishma. And according to Rava, it's in the same Medina. So you don't need to say Lishma. So because of that, you have 2 different cases where we see, right, that you don't need, that you do need according to Rabba with a Hey, and you don't need according to Rava with an Aleph. Says the Gemara, Tram, to the Mishnah, right, this is going to be a question on Rabba again with a Hey. He says, I'm a vegan in Dinat. Imagine when you bring a get from Dinat Hayam and you cannot say if you have a deem, so then you're going to be Mitkayem Chutamav. So we asked, what does it mean that you cannot say it? Again, one more time. You brought a get from Dinat Hayam and you cannot say, why can't you say it? Right? But it says, if you have a deem, just verify the signatures. But the question is, what does it mean that you can't say? What does that mean exactly? So says Gemara, if you're going to tell me that the guy's a deaf mute, can he bring a get? Obviously not. But we said everyone's going to be kosher to bring a get except for a cheresh shoteh v'katan. Chashu is cheresh shoteh v'katan, deaf mute, a person that's not 100% there, and a katan, a minor. But Amarav Yosef says Yosef, what are we dealing with? They gave it to him when he was normal, and he didn't have the time to say, and all of a sudden he became a cheresh, and therefore that's what happened. And then the Gemara is going to say, "L'Rava nicha l'Rava kasha," and the Chabaskil l'Chash limdo. You actually learned. Fine. Should we continue?